A taste of the story. Chapter 1. The year 1789 dawned on Terrace, not with the gentle whisper of a new morning, but with a cough, a wet, tubercular, lung-rattling cough that had become as common as the cobblestones themselves. For Jacques Fournier, a man whose fortunes had once rivaled his wit, the cough was a personal affront. It belonged to his landlady, Madame Dubois, a woman whose skull could curdle milk and whose breath, he was convinced, could peel paint. Another day, another descent into the abyss of your poverty, Monsieur Fournier, she'd greet him from the landing, her voice a rusted hinge. Madame, if you're going to remind me of my fiscal state, Jacques would replied, not bothering to look up from the single, sad brioche on his plate, at least had the decency to do it from a distance. Your proximity, I fear, is as detrimental to my health as this pastry is to my dignity. Jacques was a man of contrasts. He wore a patched-up silk waistcoat that had seen better days, and a threadbare velvet jacket that had not. His boots, a gift from a wealthier and now deceased uncle, were polished to a mere shine, a stubborn testament to a pride that had no business surviving in the alleyways of Saint-Germain. He had an actor's face, all sharp angles, and a smile that could be both charming and conspiratorial, depending on whether he was borrowing money or stealing a chicken. He was, in short, a dandy without a dime, a gentleman without a manner, and a philosopher who had traded weighty tomes for lighter, more edible things. His current predicament, however, was not one of his own making, at least not entirely. He was a man caught in the great, grinding gears of history, and the gears, he had discovered, had a particular fondness for chewing up and spitting out people like him. He had once been a legal clerk of some repute, working for a nobleman who had the unfortunate habit of speaking his mind about the king's taxes. The nobleman's mind and his head were separated from his body one Tuesday afternoon, and Jacques, having been a loyal employee, found himself similarly excised from the world of gainful employment. He spent his days now doing a variety of things, none of which Madame Dubois would approve of. He'd write letters for the illiterate, forging their clumsy affection into florid prose. He'd read the newspaper aloud in taverns, adding his own commentary and historical inaccuracies to keep things interesting. He'd even, on a particularly hungry afternoon, convinced a local baker that he was a renowned food critic from Vienna, and that the baker's brioche, while admittedly a masterpiece, required a second, more thorough inspection. That his most lucrative and most dangerous profession was one he kept to himself. He was a purveyor of historical artifacts. He'd scour the city's forgotten corners for what others saw as junk, and then, with a flourish and a story, he'd sell them to unsuspecting tourists. A cracked teacup was Marie Antoinette's personal chalice. A rusty nail was a relic from the very scaffold of Louis XVI's father. His lies were not malicious, they were an art form, a testament to the power of a good story. One crisp October morning, as the air crackled with the kind of revolutionary fervor that made the baker's yeast rise with a particular vigor, Jacques found himself in the bustling marketplace of Les Halles. The market was a microcosm of Paris itself, a chaotic, vibrant, and slightly dangerous symphony of humanity. The stench of fish, the perfume of fresh bread, the sound of merchants hawking their wares, it all melded into a sensory assault that Jacques found oddly comforting. He was there on a mission, a rather foolish and very urgent mission. A well-to-do English diplomat, Lord Ashworth, had commissioned him to find a truly French historical artifact for his wife's birthday, something with a bit of gravitas. Old chap, Lord Ashworth had said, stroking his impeccably groomed mustache, something that speaks to the very soul of this mad city. Jacques had, with his usual panache, assured the man that he was just the person for the job. Now, as he sifted through a pile of what could only be described as pre-owned history, he was beginning to regret his bravado. The pile contained a broken spinning wheel, a single, mismatched shoe, and what appeared to be the jawbone of a very large hog. He was about to give up when his eyes landed on a small, leather-bound book, half buried under a stack of moldy linens. He pulled it out, and the dust that rose from it smelled of old parchment and forgotten secrets. The book was a journal, and the handwriting was elegant and precise. He opened it, and the first line caught his eye. October 5, 1789. The women are marching. It has begun. Jacques' heart gave a little thump. The women's march on Versailles. A pivotal moment in the revolution, a moment of raw, visceral power. He knew of the event, of course. It was a story told and retold in every tavern. But here, in his hands, was a first-hand account. "What's that you have there, monsieur?" a voice asked from behind him. It was a woman's voice, sharp and intelligent, with a hint of an accent he couldn't quite place. He turned to see her, a young woman with a tumble of dark hair escaping from a practical cap, and eyes the color of a stormy sea. She was dressed simply, in the sensible clothes of a working-class woman, but there was an air about her, a kind of fierce independence that made her stand out from the crowd. She held a basket filled with fresh produce, and she was looking at him not with suspicion, but with a kind of amused curiosity. "This," Jacques said, his charming smile returning, "this, my dear lady, is a historical document of unparalleled significance. A diary, you see, from a very dear friend of Marie Antoinette herself." Her eyes narrowed. "A friend of the Queen, selling her secrets in a market stall? Not selling? No, perish the thought," Jacques said, his lies flowing with the ease of a well-oiled machine. "Merely misplaced. I am, in fact, on a mission to return it to her family." "It's a forged account, isn't it?" she said, her lips twitching into a smile that was surprisingly warm. "Or a fabrication altogether?" Jacques felt a flicker of surprise. This wasn't the usual gullibility he encountered. "A man must eat," he said, the truth slipping out before he could stop it. "And a good story, you see, is a much more nourishing meal than a bad one." She let out a short, sharp laugh. "I am Jean," she said, extending a hand that was callous but strong. "Jean Laroche. And you, I take it, are a rogue?" "Jacques Fournier, at your service," he replied, taking her hand. Her grip was firm, a stark contrast to the delicate hands of the noblewomen he used to court. "And I prefer the term opportunistic storyteller." Jean's gaze fell to the journal in his hands. "Let me see it," she said, her voice suddenly serious. "I was there that day. I marched with the women." Jacques, for the first time in a long time, was at a loss for words. Here, in front of him, was not a customer, but a living, breathing part of the very history he trafficked in. He handed her the book, and as she read, her face became a study in concentration. She ran her fingers over the elegant handwriting, and a strange, wistful look came into her eyes. "This isn't a diary," she said, looking up at him. "It's a ledger, a baker's ledger. This man, he wrote down not just his accounts, but his thoughts, his fears. He was a good man, a just man, and he was my father." And with that, Jacques Fournier, the great purveyor of historical fiction, found himself holding not a tool for profit, but a connection to a family's history, a connection that was about to change his life forever. Outline for the remaining chapters. This is just the beginning. The meeting of Jacques and Jean sets the stage for a grand adventure across revolutionary Paris, intertwining their personal stories with the monumental events unfolding around them. Chapter 2. The seeds of revolution. A pact is formed. Jean reveals her purpose: to find her missing brother, a radical journalist who was a close friend of the baker. She believes her brother holds crucial information, and she needs Jacques' wit and connections to navigate the city's treacherous underbelly. Jacques, initially motivated by profit, he's offered a handsome sum by Jean's aunt, a shrewd shopkeeper, finds himself drawn into the search by Jean's fierce loyalty and the mystery of the journal. A world of contrasts. The chapter explores the stark reality of revolutionary Paris. We see the world through Jean's eyes, the crowded markets, the hungry masses, the passionate political clubs. We contrast this with Jacques' world of taverns, back alley deals, and the lingering specter of his former life. Their banter and conflicting worldviews provide the wit and humor. Historical integration. The search for Jean's brother leads them to the very heart of the political upheaval. They encounter figures like the fiery Camille Desmoulins or the intimidating Georges Danton. In the vibrant atmosphere of the Palais Royal, they witness political debates, and the ever-present threat of violence hangs in the air. A glimpse of the past. The journal, the baker's ledger, becomes more than just a historical artifact. It holds clues, names, locations, and cryptic entries that lead them deeper into the mystery. We get glimpses of the baker's quiet courage and his relationship with Jean's brother, a relationship that was both personal and political. Chapter 3. The shadow of the guillotine. The reign of terror begins. The story escalates as the revolution descends into its most brutal phase. The search for the brother becomes a race against time and the ever-present threat of the guillotine. Suspicion is rampant, and old friends become new enemies. The unforgettable character. We introduce a new, compelling character, a young, ambitious, and morally ambiguous former police inspector, now key figure in the Committee of Public Safety. He is a man of chilling efficiency, and he becomes the primary antagonist a mirror of the revolution's ideals gone wrong. He knows of the baker's journal and believes it holds a secret that could expose a vast conspiracy, a test of loyalties. Jacques and Jean's bond is tested. Jacques' former connections to the aristocracy and his pragmatic cynicism clash with Jean's unwavering idealism and loyalty to her family. They must learn to trust each other completely, despite their differences, to survive historical integration. They are forced to navigate the chaos of the terror, witnessing public executions and the brutal justice of the revolutionary tribunals. The story highlights the paranoia and fear that gripped the city, and the difficult moral choices people were forced to make. The journal's clues lead them to secret meetings and hidden documents, revealing a truth far more complex than they ever imagined. Chapter 4. The Architect and the Survivor. The truth revealed. They finally find Jean's brother, but not in the way they expected. He is not a hero, but a broken man, disillusioned and in hiding. He reveals the truth about the journal. It's not a conspiracy, but a detailed account of the law affair. Du Collier de Lorraine, the affair of the diamond necklace, a scandal that had been used to discredit Marie Antoinette and was now being used as a tool by the Committee of Public Safety to justify their purges. The baker, Jean's father, was an accidental witness and his ledger held the key. A choice of ideals. The final confrontation is not with swords, but with words and ideals. Jacques and Jean must confront the antagonist, the former inspector, who has his own tragic and compelling reasons for pursuing them. The story explores the complexities of justice, the corruption of power, and the difference between fighting for a cause and simply clinging to a broken system. The human cost. The chapter focuses on the personal toll of the revolution. We see the lasting scars on Jean's brother, the moral compromises Jacques has been forced to make, and the hardened resolve of Jean. The wit and humor now serve as a coping mechanism, a flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness. Chapter 5. The Dawn of a New Era. Aftermath and Legacy. With the antagonist defeated and the truth exposed, Jacques and Jean find a measure of peace. The revolution, however, is not over. The story concludes not with a clean resolution, but with a sense of the ongoing complexity of history. The reign of terror ends, but the city remains scarred. A new beginning. Jacques, a changed man, has shed his cynicism. He uses his skills, not to tell lies, but to tell true stories, to document the lives of the ordinary people who endured the revolution. He becomes a writer, a historian, an unlikely chronicler of a city in turmoil. Jean, no longer a girl searching for a missing brother, becomes a woman of purpose, a quiet force for change in her community. The final act. The story ends with Jacques and Jean standing on the banks of the Seine, looking out at the city. Their banter has evolved from clever quips to the shared language of a long journey. The journal, the baker's legacy, is now not just a historical document, but a testament to the power of ordinary people to shape the course of history. They've found not just each other, but a shared purpose. The revolution, in its chaotic, brutal way, has given them something profound and new.